Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Rapid Done right here on Rapid Television. And of course, Victor Ejema has given myself and Martha our jersey number. So that means we're just we're being signed into the club, the Victor Ejema FC. Yes, of course. So manager, bring our money to us as much as possible. But of course, welcome back. This is time for the big conversation. My name is Victor. Okay.
My name is Martha Alu. The big conversation for today is honestly very interesting, or would be very interesting, because it talks about advancing Nigeria's system, both educational and the workforce system, basically.
Very true. And of course, just like Martha has stated already, we are discussing a major issue affecting Nigeria's economy, businesses, and young people. And the topic we titled, Nigeria's Workforce Crisis, Closing the Talent Gap. Well, across Nigeria today, many young people are searching for jobs, yet many companies say that they cannot find enough skilled workers to employ. According to Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics, youth unemployment and underemployment remain major concerns, especially among graduates entering the labor market. Many employers now say that there is a growing gap between what schools teach and the skills industries actually need. And this particular conversation became even louder this week after comments by Tosin Enyolurunda, the CEO of MoneyPoint, went viral online. And he was speaking at the platform Nigeria in Lagos, where he said that his company has about 500 job openings, but is struggling to find Nigerians with the right skills and global standards needed for the roles. Let's watch and listen to the CEO of MoneyPoint talk.
We chopped the cane in 2025. You know, it hit me to the bone when Auntie Kemi also mentioned that even Alhaji Dangote was saying that Nigeria, if you go to my fact, in 2024, we made a decision that we will no longer hire from any other place than Nigeria, and we chopped the cane in 2025. We chopped the cane in 2025. You know, it hit me to the bone when Auntie Kemi also mentioned that even Alhaji Dangote was saying that Nigeria, if you go to MoneyPoint career website, which you can go and apply if you want to, we have probably maybe 500 vacancies or so. And we are struggling to find people to fill those roles. Not only could we not find people at the quality and the quantity we needed them, the few people that we found were not up to the global standards of quality that we needed. And we're competing globally. You're not competing with just local players. You people know my biggest competition. You know where they are from. They are from China. I'm competing globally. I need to make sure that I have world-class people working on the organization. And here I am, looking for Nigerians that cannot meet the requirements that we need to meet to be able to compete and build world-class products. I blame quite a bit of things. I blame our education system. I used to feel like Nigerians are really, really bright. And I am honestly beginning to feel like we need to do something to prevent the general IQ of this country from going lower. I am really, really worried. I used to feel like intelligence is equally distributed around the world. But I am realizing now that environment shapes a lot of things. I am realizing that the social media that we are consuming all the time. I am realizing now that the values that are shaping our systems now, the hookup culture, the yahoo yahoo culture, the let me just do cool things because that's what matters.
CEO of MoneyPoint speaking there. And of course, that rather also have raised questions from experts saying that is this, or how can a country with millions of unemployed youth still have companies struggling to find qualified workers? Is Nigeria producing graduates or producing job-ready talent? And of course, with the rising Japa trend, are we losing some of our best minds faster than we are developing new ones in Nigeria? And joining us this morning are Sheyi Babatunde, CEO, HRO Leverage Africa, and Hamid Kayode Alabi, social entrepreneur and founder of Kayode Alabi Leadership and Career Initiative. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the conversation this morning. Hello, gentlemen. Good morning.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to Rapid Done. Thank you for joining us.
All right, let's begin the conversation. Now, Nigeria has one of the largest youth population in the world, with over 60% under the age of 30. Yet, unemployment and underemployment remains extremely high, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. So my question to you this morning is, from your experience and observation, what do you think is the disconnect, looking at the situation in the country? Hello, can you hear us? Yeah, Shay, this question is to you, Shay.
This for me?
Yes, go on. Go ahead, Shay.
Okay, awesome. All right, awesome. So the disconnect basically is from a lot of distraction that you see, the emergence of social media, among other things, has really gotten the workforce generally distracted. So the disconnect between what is available in the job market and what the employee, or so to speak, team to be hired or workforce basically have, it's from the skill set that they possibly have. Okay, because some matters like this, you have to look at where the supply is coming from, the supply and the demand. Okay, the institution supply you have baked graduates, and they expect the workforce to possibly the employer to possibly just absorb them, even without necessary work to necessary skill that can easily be transferable into the employment stream. So the disconnect basically is about the skill set that is needed for the work to be done in an organization, vis-a-vis what the institution have given the society. So that's basically the disconnect. And of course, a lot of things are moving fast. The era of AI and the policy dynamics of global workforce is changing. So basically, it's the skill that is needed vis-a-vis what the employment space needs is what happens about the disconnect.
All right, thank you, Shay.
All right, thank you so much. Let's go on to Mr. Hamid right now, and thank you so much again for joining us on the show this morning. Right, the next question would be from the conversation or the video we played from Mr. Tosin Eniolorunda, where he was talking about the IQ level of Nigeria has dropped. He did mention some factors like social media, the people that we allow to mentor us, and the things that the kind of things they mentor us on. Now, aside that, we have with us the World Bank report that was deleted on the 7th of April, which of course has been on the social space. And on that report, it did say that only 30% of Nigerian children aged 3 to 5 can identify 5 letters, and only 34% can identify numbers 1 to 5, which means that 52% of toddlers are off track developmentally. It also did talk about how 6 in every 10 children under 5 are stunted, and how they are not able to have basic cognitive learning and behavior. So because you are an educator, my next question to you would be, do you think this is what the reports say is the actual thing that happens in the Nigerian system today as regards the educational stability and the cognitive learning of young people and then people in the workforce?
Thank you so much for that question. And I think, when I was reflecting on this idea and the fact that, there's a lot happening with our workforce today,
okay.
I think most of the time we like to talk about the workforce without talking about the pipeline, right? I think the pipeline is most of the problem, and it's very important for us to go back to like the roots, the basic education. And the pipeline actually starts with the teacher themselves, right? So when you look at the whole problem, you see how are we recruiting teachers, in our schools, for example, in this school where our children learn. So you look at the people who score the lowest in UTME exams, and those are the people that have been sent to the educational sector, or sent to the educational department, or sent to the colleges of education. So the idea is that if you're sending people with the lowest of results to the colleges of education, then what happens to the educational sector? What happens to the skills that the student learns? Student will not learn from anywhere. Students have to learn from teachers, right? Because when you think about the agents of socialization, the school becomes an agent of socialization, and the teachers have an equal role to play in actually upskilling, young people, and actually supporting young people to develop, some of these cognitive skills, or whether you're talking about basic foundational skills like literacy and numeracy, which are very important for the workforce or for the future of work. So one of the things is that when you're looking at the pipeline, what kind of teachers, are we sending, to schools, or what kind of teachers are we sending to the colleges of education? And I understand that, this is not just, again, a teacher problem. This is also an economic problem, right? Because when you look at it as well, you look at the incentives as well. Would I teach when I know that I'm going to earn, less than $15 or less than $20 per month? So we need to increase the incentives for teachers as well, that if teachers are earning a higher salary, for example, that would encourage them to go develop skills, to go like learn about AI, to go learn about technology, to go like find new ways of teaching. So I would say that the first thing is the pipeline. So we need to look at the pipeline problem. We need to look at, how people are being recruited into the educational sector, how teachers are being recruited into the educational sector. That it's not those who score the lowest of the low marks in UTME that we send to colleges of education, right? Or that we send to the faculty of education to go become teachers. And then when you also look at it again in another context as well, you see that if somebody is not doing well in another department, for example, I can say this because I've seen this when I was in university myself. I studied education myself. Why is it that as the people who kind of like could not do well in other departments, say engineering, say industrial chemistry, say many other kind of like that departments, are being sent back to the educational sector because their GP could not cope with that course? Right? And then you want these people to go learn, maybe, for example, science education. You want them to go learn math education. You want them to go learn chemistry education. And then you want the same people to teach your students who would end up becoming either engineers or industrialists, right? So again, when you look at the pipeline, there's a problem with the pipeline, right? So if we are saying that students are not learning in school, if we are saying that there's a challenge with literacy, if we are saying that there's a challenge with numeracy, we also need to talk about the teachers. The reason why some of us end up becoming, doing great or end up learning is because we are teachers who actually roll up their sleeves, right? So it's not just a statistic problem, right? It's also a teacher's problem. And I think, we need to rethink that. We need to think about the incentives. We need to make sure that the educational sector get the necessary investment it needs so that the educational sector in itself can thrive. So without that, things will not change, because
all right,
we can keep talking about the problems, we can keep talking about the problems, without actually talking about the roots of
solution,
the issue, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Really important that we need to get back to the issues, of course, talking about the pipeline, using the word that you use. But let me get back to you, Shay, talking about, because we were talking about experience earlier on. You talked about the skill gap as well, talking about the disconnect. But I've also seen many Nigerians complain. I'm talking to Shay now. Talking about many Nigerians have complained that some of the challenges that they face when it comes to workforce is that entry-level jobs require at least 2 to 5 years of experiences. Now, take for instance a person who has a skill that has been developed already, but does not have the years of experience to get into that particular area. And most of these companies are asking for 2 years or 5 years of experience. How does this person vis-a-vis get into that particular industry with no year of experience at all? But have in mind, this person already has developed this skill, but has no years of experience, in the workforce. Hello, Shay. We can't hear you, Shay. Could you please unmute your microphone, please?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Awesome. So the simple answer is basically internship. I personally am a product of graduate finishing school, and so prior to entering the workforce, I did a lot of volunteering. Okay, I did a lot of volunteering. I basically, as you want me to speak it, I did a lot of free work for people. So when employers advertise jobs and they ask entry level to have 2 years or 3 years experience, those years experience and they want a fresh graduate to possibly apply, maybe because of the salary in question, or because they just want someone that is fresh. Sometimes it possibly puts age limitation or something. Now, how do graduates that is just coming out of university or coming out of any of our colleges, how do they apply to the job? If that is the question you're trying to ask,
right?
The simple answer is internship. You can never go wrong with internship. You see, when you graduate from school, when graduates graduate from school, one of what they possibly might be thinking is that there's going to be a free job in the market. There's no job anywhere in the world. Even Americans are claiming that there's no job. There will never be abundant job. But what we always set aside a graduate that is about to add value is little things like internship. When you were in school, did you volunteer to be, let's say you're in school fellowship, did you volunteer to be like your drummer? Did you volunteer to be like your fellowship, maybe teacher or something? What are some of those little skills that you've been able to do while even schooling? I am a very, very much advocate of try and look for internship opportunity. Sometimes you might never get that enough. Go to certain institution that you want to work for and try and volunteer your service. And by the time you volunteer your service, say for, let's say, 6 weeks, 6 months, or within 3 to 6 months, one of the things you discover is that you now have customer service skill, you have people relational skill, you possibly cannot use computer, which necessarily you might not be able to learn that from the institution that you're coming from. Right. So internship is the easiest way to get some of this job.
All right. Thank you so much.
Job.
Thank you so much, Shay, because I don't think that the matter of internship and volunteerism can be overemphasized, especially when it comes to the workforce. The quickest way to get an experience. Now, I know that by virtue of your experience as a HR professional, you would have interacted with a lot of young people and emerging workforce. And I want to take us back to the video of Tosin Eniolorun, the co-founder of MoneyPoint, because that conversation, he made some very salient points, which I don't want us to miss this morning. First, he talked about the fact that the IQ level of a lot of Nigerian workers have significantly reduced because of the kind of content that we consume, and he made social media as one of the reasons for that. Yeah. He also did make mention of the fact that a lot of people are not employable. So there's a problem of employability. There's an IQ problem, there's an employability problem, and then he made mention also, of course, there are so many things that he made mention of while he was having this conversation. And yes, he said education gaps, brain drain, lack of feeder industries, and a number of other things. Now, my question to that would be, we have heard him say this. The reaction of that online has been, Nigerian workforce or Nigerian employers do not pay enough for the quality of service that they are demanding from people. In fact, he came under fire for that as well, saying, how much does MoneyPoint pay? Do you pay enough to be able to demand for global standards? Can you help us speak to this morning? Are you with us, Shay? Shay, are you with us? Unmute your mic, Shay.
Shay, please talk to us on this particular question that has been asked now. Okay, perhaps maybe we'll just move that question to Kayode.
He is an educator, so I think it's most appropriate for a HR professional because he has interacted with that. If Shay can hear us, it will be nice to have him speak to that. Okay. But in the case where he is not, let's go on to Kayode now. Yeah. Kayode, please talk to us about you have spoken about how the workforce or the teachers or the educators need to be paid attention to, the quality of people that we send to schools to be teachers to these young people that would eventually emerge as the workforce for our nation, how they should be treated. But yes, I also like to take us back to what Tosin had said, and he made mention of skills gap. Do you see a skill gap in Nigerian's workforce, and how can this gap be closed?
The skill gap. I think, there might be an element of truth there around, a bit of skill mismatch. And I think, again, it goes back to the educational sector. It goes back to what people are learning in school. It goes back to, the roots or the background. And I hold the opinion, that, we need to rethink our secondary school education, right? I think basic education, people are doing well. The moment you can read and write, you learn the basic literacy and numeracy skills. You can, I think that's the basics you get, like in primary school, for example. But when it goes to like secondary school, when it goes to like that, higher education, there's a need for us to now rethink, what are we actually teaching? Because we need to move away from some certain courses already. I think there's a need for courses to now be interdisciplinary, because now we've realized that a discipline can actually solve a problem anymore. So we need to rethink the curriculum. What are people actually learning, even in secondary school, in terms of like the subjects we learn? You know, how do we ensure that the subject actually looks at all the discipline, looks at the current reality? You know, once we review that curriculum, and I understand that I think there was a curriculum review that was done, you know, some months ago, where they said programming has been added into the educational sector. They said coding has been added, you know, some kind of like new AI courses have been added into the educational sector. But again, when you also add all of this into the curriculum, who are the people that are going to be implementing some of this curriculum? Do they have the capacity or do they have the knowledge to actually implement this curriculum? And if we want to train them as well, how long would it take us to even train them to ensure that they currently meet that standard? And that's when I think that there's a need for us to now rethink the model of teaching, right? I feel that if you graduate from secondary school, you should be able to work in subsistence companies.
Okay.
That's what I feel.
Okay.
Like if you complete secondary school, and then we used to have the 1980s, where our fathers used to, with their SSC degree, they could actually work somewhere, right? We need to bring back those things, right? We need to rethink, you know, what education actually means. That when I finish secondary school, I should be able to do some certain work. I should be able to think critically, you know, because when you look at why they say some people cannot solve some problem in some particular company, for example, is because they've not been put in that condition, even both in the university, where you're actually working on like real projects that solve real world problems, and you're using like tools and technology to actually solve those real problems. And you're like, you know, you're struggling with the people you're working with, right? You know, the human connection, you know, all of those human skills. Those are the things that are needed in the workforce, that if you're able to see data, what does this data says, you know, and you're turning that data into insight and using that insight to create products and to engage, you know, all of those kind of knowledge, all of those kind of skills. I feel like at the level of secondary school, I feel like people should be able to get a bit of that in between. They should be able to think critically. It's not the exam, you know, where you kind of like, define this and then you write it down. What you're measuring. So in education, there's what we call domains of education, right? There's the cognitive, there's the affective, and there's the psychomotor. Then when you look at the cognitive, the way to measure cognitive, there are multiple ways of measurement, right? When you're measuring cognitive, right? So you're measuring the knowledge, you're measuring compression, you're measuring synthesis, you're measuring analytics, you know. So when you're measuring all of those things, there's the higher order one and there's the lower order one. But when you look at most of our exams are actually measuring the lower order one without measuring the higher order one, right? So these are the things we need to start rethinking of, like, how do we measure higher order thinking, right? How do you measure analytics, right? How do you measure synthesis, you know, how people can bring in, you know, all of this together. Obviously, there's no statistics to say that these are the number of people with very low IQ. We don't have the data for that, right? You know, we don't have the data for that. So we can actually generalize in that case. But I think there's a lot of rethinking that we need to do with our educational sector.
All right. Of course, whilst we were talking, one of the things that came to mind is currently in the education system, we see more of the theory than the practical as well. You've talked about, you know, solving real world problems, but again, how much of an enforcement now do we need now in our country, Nigeria, when it comes to, I mean, both university, the colleges of education, the polytechnics, you know, should get into more practical, you know, than theory kind of teaching.
So I think it's a balance, right? And I think it's a balance, and I think we need to start working with, like, even professionals. How do we even bring employers into the school system? Right? You know, I think sometimes we like to, like, put blames on different people, but I think, you know, if there are gaps in between, you know, employers need to come into the school system. We need to make practitioners who then work with lecturers to then teach students. You know, because I think it's very important to start out rethinking that. How do we then do a bit of blended learning, right? If, you know, the teachers don't have all the skills, how do you work with the practitioner to deliver a subject together, right? And then you look at what are the problem companies are trying to solve. So you look at those problem companies are trying to solve, and then you bring them into the classroom as a case study.
All right.
And then people,
all right, let's
go.
Okay, sorry. We'll get back to that anyway. Yeah. But let's quickly get to Shay. I think Shay's back on the line now. Shay, are you here with us now?
Can he answer our previous question?
All right, Shay.
Oh no, too bad.
Okay, so too bad.
Let's have him.
Okay, let's get you land on that thought when he talked about the practical learning now on the balance on the scale. And talking to you now, Kayode, I think Shay is still a bit fluctuating at the moment. So let's get back to you, Kayode. It's still your moment. Okay, Shay is back on the line. Okay, Shay, welcome back. You know. All right, so
can you hear us?
Can you hear us now? Hello.
Right. I can hear you loud.
All right, so that was the question Martha asked. Anyway.
Can you
go ahead.
Did you hear the question I asked? I think you went off a bit.
You might need to take it
Okay,
again.
you might want to repeat the question.
All
Please.
right, definitely will. Now, I was talking about the fact that there were certain points. I do acknowledge the fact that as a HR professional, you would have interacted with all sorts of people from the emerging workforce and the workforce in Nigeria. And the certain points that Tosin and Yolorunda made in that video that we saw, which I wouldn't like for us to miss out. He talked about how he has about 500 vacancies, but there's a skill gap. He's not finding people enough that are qualified enough with global standards to be able to fit into that position. Secondly, he did talk about the drop or the decline in the IQ of Nigerians because of what we consume. I know that he did make mention of the fact that social media also plays an important part, and the people that we have as role models. Now, he made a number of other points, and I see that you are a HR professional. You have quite an experience and you interact with people. Can you let us know what you make of these analysis? Now, before we even get there, there are two sides of the conversation. While he said that the internet went agog, talking about the fact that most of these employers do not have what it takes, or they are not willing to pay for global standards, which is why they don't get people with global standards. Can you address this for us? Are you on the line, Shay?
Please unmute your microphone so we can get to hear you, Shay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, better now. Yeah, we can now. Go on, please.
Okay. So absolutely, I quite agree with some of his analysis as an employer myself, and as an observer, as somebody that I've dealt with, that have done a lot of hiring and talent management for over the years. So I quite agree with some of what he talked about. However, there are certain analyses that might need to be checked, especially when he mentioned that Nigerian talent cannot compete globally. I don't agree with that. However, there's a lot of truth in what he has said. Number one, the fact that certain jobs might be left vacant on field because you couldn't find local team to local workforce to fill it. One of the things we need to understand is that you can do a job, which is the technical aspect. That you can do a job doesn't necessarily mean that you have the attitude to fill into certain company. So apart from you having possessing technical ability as an applicant, what is your attitude to work? What is your value to work? So it's like an avatar. For every company, they have what they call value system. There are certain values that a company possibly need to work in for you to be able to be accepted to work with them. So let me just give you a straightforward answer. Let's say you are an engineer. Is a fintech. The guy works in a fintech company, so it's fintech. So you're an engineer. You're a full stack engineer, and you can code, you can monitor, you can manage a lot of other engineers. So you have the technical skills to do the job.
Okay.
However, MoneyPoint being a global organization, MoneyPoint having a lot of investors from America, from the UK, they actually have an office in the UK. European cultural inclination might possibly be part of what they will be looking for. Okay, in Europe, for instance, data security is very, very key. So if you are the kind of person that you cannot keep certain trade secrets, you easily go online, talk about what your company is building, even before it is launched. Those are startup data bridges. So you can have the technical capacity to do a job, but what is the value? Is the value of a company aligning with yours, or is your own personal value aligning with it? So MoneyPoint possibly have those vacancies. They've seen a lot of people, but they have the value of MoneyPoint or the culture of MoneyPoint might not be in the same sync with the job applicant that is trying to get into MoneyPoint. So definitely they will tell you that they can't find people because technicality is one thing, value system and culture fit is another thing. So if you ask MoneyPoint, yes, they will tell you that they're still recruiting, but they can't find the people that possibly fit.
Sure. O'Shea, I think we'll have to have him join us again. But let's talk to Kayode very briefly now. Kayode, let's bring in the private sector now. As we see that many companies mostly complain about skills, but how much are they investing in training fresh graduates? Because you talked about you talked about the pipelines when you talked about education right now. Fresh graduates. How much should companies be investing when it comes to training fresh graduates instead of expecting ready-made talent? In this part of the world.
I think when you look at different when you look at, there's something called positive action, right? And positive action is when you start like taking action towards getting people into work. So if you think that the data shows that there's a skill mismatch, then how do you create like a training program, right? Like a kind of like an internship, like she mentioned, or so you kind of like create like that program where people can then learn all of those skills, and then they transition, they learn all the values, they learn all of those things. So there's a need for a bit of positive action there, right? Because also like when people don't have the space to learn and the space to make mistakes, it might mean that they might not be able to even transition into the workforce. So they need a place where they can make mistakes. They need a place where they can be trained. They need a place where they can, if, for example, they don't get that in school, so there's a need for like an alternative kind of like training, for those younger people. For example, I think it was in 2020, or I did a program called the Teachers in Training Bootcamp, and it was training like teachers in their final years on how they can become like, transformative teachers. These are people who are going to be going into the workforce. And for the first time, some of them are making a PowerPoint presentation for the first time and pitching for the first time. I assume this is something that should have happened even before they kind of like graduate, right? They should have learned how to do a PowerPoint. They should have learned pitch. Some people could pitch, some people could create a PowerPoint, but there were some people who couldn't, right? So if you have like a training academy that allows people to like kind of like, learn all of the skills and then transition into the workforce, and then you've gotten the pipeline. But I know that there's always a fear around company that, we're going to lose these people, we're going to lose that. But I think there are other things that, we can do, that make people stay as well, right? The values we offer them, the labor laws, sometimes I think, do labor laws actually protect, people? I don't think our labor law is I'm not sure of the implementation of our labor laws in a way that it protects the people, right? In a way that it's also like, not just protect the people, also protect the employers themselves together, right? So that when people come in, there's transparency, so people are not coming into companies to like, they are not coming and not working, right? So, and also like employers are also taking advantage of people, because there are things that I've heard about people who have gone into the workforce and they don't have good experiences with their employers.
Right.
So it's like a kind of like a two-way street, right? When we talk about values on the end of the person that is coming into a job, we need to talk about the values of the employers as well. You might imagine the data shows that about 61% of young women, for example, are not in the workforce. Like, they are not employed, out of the data that shows of the people who are unemployed in the country. So if 61% of young women are not employed, it shows you something, right? It shows that, are women actually feeling safe even when they go to the workforce, for example. So I feel like, sometimes when we look at this problem, we look at it from like a very simplistic perspective. And when you try to simplify problems, sometimes you don't get to the solution. So we need to complexify, some of this problem. And I think companies need to do much more in terms of like positive action, right? In supporting them. But again, I also think, again, you look at it again, it's not even the company's problem, it's also an economics problem, right? How much money is it going around the economy? How many companies do we have to even hire this talent or to absorb the talents we are producing in the university? And that's why I think that we need to rethink secondary education and we need to fix the economy, because to be honest, some people don't want to go to the university to start with. But it's because there's no work anywhere. That's why they decided to go to university. But with my secondary school education, with my secondary school degree, I can do some basic job and earn decent income. I can tell you, and I can support my family, I can tell you that not every single person will want to go to the university.
But Hamid, sorry, I might just have to interject there. Don't you think that will also affect the quality of the workforce? Because if everyone keeps stopping at secondary education, no one is furthering to tertiary education. Don't you think that our the growth rate of our workforce will be stunted. Now we have people who only went through the secondary education, and we all know that the secondary education has what it contributes to the overall learning and development of a child, and then the university education also does same in its own right.
So again, you have to now then think about like what kind of job do you want people to do as well. Not so many people want to get into technical roles, for example.
Okay.
So to be honest, you look at some countries, people actually prefer to work in like Walmart or, for example, like a ShopRite.
Okay.
I just want to do some basic work, right? And I think with secondary education, you are able to do a bit of those basic work. But the problem is that, does that income actually commensurate with the work, right?
The work.
If you're going to work in those places and then you're earning peanuts, you're earning like 20,000 naira, you're earning 30,000 naira, how decent is that? You know, but if you know that if I go into that place and I work, you know, even though this work that I'm doing is not, and I earn like maybe let's say 150,000, 200,000 naira, I'm like, okay, I think that is enough for me. And I don't want to get into like these big technical things. But people want to get into those big technical things, get the reward at the end of the day. You know, you want to work as a software engineer, you want to start this, you want to build solution, you want to build, you know, then you can then go into the university. But because if everybody goes into the university and everybody now is now fully trained, who is going to absorb all of those people? So that's why we need to rethink the economy. And that's why I think it's an economics problem.
Okay.
Because if there's no money within the economy, or even if you don't have enough businesses, you know, when you look at true capitalism, what is true capitalism? You know, we say we run mixed economy in Nigeria, is a bit of socialism and capitalism. But a true capitalism is where businesses are not monopolized, where there are like multiple businesses and government is supporting almost everyone, giving everybody equal footing to produce. And if there's an equal footing for everybody to produce, what happens is that the consumers end up winning. And it means that if consumer ends up winning, it means that people can decide where they want to do businesses and there's no, you know, a particular sector that is being monopolized. You then decide, where do I want to do business? And if business start making enough decent income, money flows within the economy, it means that people can easily hire people. And what the government needs to do is to set labor laws, set rules of payment, right?
Okay.
Set income in a way that is decent and dignified.
All right, Kayode. All right, Kayode. We know you have quite a number of things.
Quite passionate about the topic, even.
And we probably might have to revisit this, and then we'll still talk more about this particular matter. But because of our time, this is all we are going to be taking in the conversation today. Thank you so much, Hamid Kayode Alabi, for your time with us today. We do appreciate you. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
And of course, we were also talking with Shea Babatinde, the CEO of HR Leverage Africa, and we've been talking about the skill gaps here in Nigeria, talking about the Nigeria's workforce crisis, closing the talent gap. You know, Kayode did make mention of the fact that we need to get back to, you know, the training sector when it talks about schools, who are the people that are actually training the people that will even get down to the labor market. And these guys have to be properly trained as much as possible. And of course, those were his thoughts.
Right. Yes, I'll also take lead from what Kayode had said. He said when in school, the people who didn't meet up, or before you get into school, the people that had a very low or below the cutoff mark will be sent to colleges of education. And these are the people that are supposed to now teach other people, because if you go to a college of education, most times it's expected that you will become a teacher right, in the classrooms, right? And if we keep sending the people who are below the cutoff mark, the expectations, sending them there, then we raise the same kind of people in the same kind of environment and we send them into the classrooms. What quality of education do we hope to get from this kind of people? That's one. Secondly, I have always wondered about sending core members without
adequate training,
or experience to teach into classrooms. Because most times when it's just a few years ago that you see most people getting into companies to do their NYSC. But normally we know that when you are done with your school, when you are being posted for your NYSC, it's mostly to a classroom to teach young people. These people do not have any requisite knowledge when it comes to teaching in schools. Right. So how are they now being deployed into these institutions to teach young people? So I think the culture needs to be addressed. The culture of how we raise the workforce, or the people that in turn teach these young people, needs to be addressed as well. And Hamid Ankai is the same person. Sheyi did make mention of the fact that there's a mismatch. Your expectations are different from what is in reality.
That's right.
Money Point might be looking for tech giants. You are not a tech giant, or you are a tech giant, but your work culture do not align. So I think organizations should now go for people that have the training, the work culture that they desire in a work environment. So maybe by then we would not say maybe the IQ has dropped, because you keep bringing people to an environment that they will naturally underperform, rather than keeping them in an environment that they will thrive.
All right. Of course, that being said, one final question, and this one goes to you watching us this morning. Nigerians complain, of course, that employers, first of all, complain that Nigerians seeking for jobs, they are not disciplined. And Nigerians that are seeking for jobs are saying that employers are exploitative. Now, the question is, who is telling the truth? You just might want to be able to give us that answer on our social media pages across our platforms at Rapid TV. And of course, do recall that you can watch us or rewatch our episodes on our YouTube platform, which is at Official Rapid TV. And wherever you are in the world, you can watch us live using our website, www.arabianradiotv.com. My name is Victor. Okay.
And my name is Martha Alu. Thank you for joining us on the Rapid Dawn this morning. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.